في ليلة من الليال لست أدري ما تراني ظلمة تغمرني أرى
الأرض ضاقت والسماء وقلبي ما عرف الضياء والدمع بات يبكي يا إلهي يا إلهي يا إلهي يا إلهي يا إلهي.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Direct us, O Lord, in our speaking, our listening, and our thinking this afternoon, so that what we do in this place may be pleasing in your sight. We are in the EL-HIBRI Charitable Foundation's building, and our host is Judy Barsalou. Dr. Judy Barsalou is the Executive Director of the Foundation, and I would like you to say a word.
I would be happy to. It's all here, we'll say. Good evening, and welcome. And I have to say how happy I am to greet you this evening and welcome you to the EL-HIBRI Foundation. As of today, our name has legally been changed to the EL-HIBRI Foundation. We've dropped the charitable part, but we still believe in charity and social justice at the same time. But I'm very happy to welcome you to, I guess this is the third occasion at which we've hosted this lecture series at the Foundation, and it represents for us a opportunity to see in one space people of good faith, of different faiths, coming together to explore issues of common interest. This gets to the heart of why we are here, this foundation, and what our purpose is. We are fundamentally oriented around promoting peace and respect for diversity. And with respect to the former, we focus on supporting and engaging in activities relating to peace education in its various forms, in formal and informal settings. And with respect to promoting respect for diversity, we make grants, we operate programs, but we're fundamentally focused on creating spaces and encouraging exploration of differences and commonalities that we all share as part of the human race. So welcome again, and I'm delighted we have such wonderful speakers this evening. I'm looking forward to the lectures. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. I want to thank the EL-HIBRI Foundation for hosting us, and for this is our third year to be here. We're delighted to be here to share in this beautiful place and know more about your mission and your work. And welcome to the directorship. My name is Larry Goldman. I'm the director of the Washington Theological Consortium. The consortium is a community of theological schools and institutes. It was started around theological education with Christian seminaries in the Washington region, and now spanning from Richmond to Gettysburg. And we have formed partnerships with institutes in spirituality and Islamic studies, and are delighted to have those partners. We are dedicated to advancing studies in ecumenism and church unity within the Christian community, and we're dedicated to advancing studies in interreligious dialogue and understanding. And increasingly, we're committed to religious leaders who know more about other faiths and are in a position to dialogue openly and with candor about their own traditions around shared commitments and differences, but in a peaceful manner. We welcome all of you tonight, and I think we have a wonderful program in store. I'm going to turn it back over to Richard Jones. Did you share with them your title, sir?
Nothing.
Well, I have to say something about Richard. He's a character, but a blessed one who knows how to build bridges with numerous people and communities. Does a wonderful job. He holds the AL-ALWANI chair in Muslim Christian Studies with the Consortium, chair that is funded by the Heritage Trust and is named similarly to these lectures, and we'll hear more about that. Richard's a dear colleague to work with, and he'll be moderating this evening.
Thank you. I am delighted to welcome all of you to this, which is the 5th annual pair of lectures organized to honor Dr. Taha Kabir Al-Alwani. Dr. Alwani is now living in Cairo. He continues to offer the public his views on liberty of minorities under Islamic law, the right relation between God's wisdom and human social sciences, and other challenges to people who want to be both citizens of a modern state and committed to obeying God. I trust that Dr. Alwani will be pleased to know of the 2 scholars that are now going to share their views here in the Washington area, where he himself taught for years. And I know he would be pleased that all of you have come out of similar concern and similar interest this afternoon. The plan is for one 40-minute lecture. Be strong. Another 40-minute lecture. Responses from each lecturer to the other for 5 minutes, and then your turn. So think what it is that you want to tag for a question. We'll have about 20 minutes for that, and then we will go down one level to restore you with another wonderful reception. There are restrooms on this floor, down there, marked WC. There are restrooms down where you came in, inside the front door. We will also, just before we take the recess for the reception, introduce 2 students who have completed the certificate in Muslim Christian Studies and present those certificates to them. Our first lecturer is Sayyid Amir Akrami, who holds the MA in Religion from University of Tehran, PhD from McGill University, worked for the Iranian Institute of Philosophy, and has worked on interreligious dialogue for the Secretariat for Interreligious Dialogue of Iran. He's participated in the Building Bridges seminar series launched by the Archbishop of Canterbury. He translated into Persian Hans Kuhn's Global Ethics, published 1998, and currently is in Harrisonburg, Virginia, in residence with his wife, Shakuri Rad, who is also here. Thank you for being here, making the journey. She's a member of the faculty of the Center for Women's Studies at the University of Tehran. So I hope you will get to meet her as well as the lecturers at the reception. Dr. Akrami, welcome. We look forward to all that you will say.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Larry. And thank you, Dr. Barstow. And thanks to everyone who has been involved in organizing this wonderful meeting. I hope that we will have a good talk and good conversation, and also inspiring questions and discussion will follow. Go directly to my paper, which is on the question of this meeting, what Ahlul Kitab is from a Quranic perspective, and what kind of attitude the Quran prescribes to Muslims to take towards them. That's the core question of this meeting. In our turbulent world of religious, cultural, and political violence, distrust, and misunderstanding, interfaith relations are of paramount importance and value, and one of the urgent and salient tasks of those who aspire to promote peace, reconciliation, and mutual understanding. Apart from the dark sides of our religious checkered histories and theologies, we have fortunately significant resources for addressing the pressing problems and issues that we all encounter in constructive and healthy ways. In this context, the relation between Muslims and adherents of other religious traditions occupy a crucial place in shaping the dynamics of relations between different important parts of the religious and political world. Among the most pertinent categories employed to ponder over, formulate, and form these relations, the designation of the people of the book Ahl-Kitab is a major and indispensable category that, from an Islamic perspective, has to be taken seriously. The central status that this designation has in determining how Islamic communities can or should shape their relations with non-Muslims is highlighted by the inclusion of this important category in all the significant sources on interfaith discussions where one side of the relations is Islam. We shall be undertaking in this paper a brief study of what Ahl-Kitab means in the Quran and what kind of attitude is expected from Muslims to take towards them. Of course, one can discuss the issue of Ahl-Kitab from Hadith's point of view or in the legal writings of Muslim scholars or from historical or theological perspectives. These are other interesting questions that naturally do not fall within the scope of this inquiry. The most obvious reason for giving prominence to the Quran as the source from which we ought to acquire our understanding of the term Ahl-Kitab is that the Quran occupies the most authoritative status among various sources of knowledge and inspiration in Islam. All other sources, from Hadith to theology or jurisprudence, are to be understood in the light of the Quran's enunciations. For example, the Prophet is quoted as saying that whatever in my sunnah is contrary to the Quran has to be thrown on the wall. Now we turn to the main questions of who the people of the book are in the Quran and what kind of attitude is prescribed to Muslims to take in relation to the people who are instances of reference of Ahl-Kitab. The first thing to consider here is to see what the notion of kitab means in the Quran. The term kitab has at its root KTB, kataba, which is normally taken to mean to write, and therefore kitab as the noun from that root means writing. However, a quick survey of Quranic verses in which this word and its cognates are used brings to our attention that the word does not necessarily denote typical writing, which normally requires using something by which to write, like a pen or pencil, or on which to write, like a paper. One of the common and frequent usages of the word in the Quran is prescription. For example, in 2:183, we read, O believers, kutiba in Arabic, which means here prescribed, for you is the fasting, the month of Ramadan, as it was prescribed for those that were before you. Haply you will be God conscious. In another verse, 3:53, God is supplicated by asking, Lord, we believe in that thou hast sent down, and we follow the messenger. Record us, faktubna, with those who bear witness. Obviously, God is not expected to write, and what is meant here is to ask to make or include us among those who bear witness. Also in 3:181, sanaktubu is used from the root kataba, which again obviously does not denote writing but preserving. The same thing can be found in other verses such as 4:81 and 7:156 and similar ones. In an interesting verse, 58:22, the Quran talks about a group of believers who God has written faith upon their hearts, which can mean to fix or strengthen. In a couple of verses, interestingly, God in the Quran talks about himself, herself, or itself as kataba, wrote perhaps, for himself, mercy. Kataba ala nafsiha ar-rahma. In 6:12 and 6:52. Or in 58:21, we read, God has written, I shall assuredly be the victor, I and my messengers. كتب الله لأغلبن أنا ورسلي. Surely God is all strong, almighty. It is again obvious in these instances that kataba, wrote, is not to be taken literally. These observations indicate that there are many nuances in the word kitab and its cognates in the Quran that have to be taken into consideration if we want to obtain a clear picture of what kitab means in the Quran. More broadly, the Quran conceives of itself, the Torah and the Gospel, as a book. This is a recurring theme whose implications we need to explore to understand what the term the people of the book means in the Quran. Daniel Madigan, I'm very glad that he's with us here, our very knowledgeable colleague, has done a commendable study on the Quran's self-image, which can help us here to get a better sense of what kitab means in the Quran. His general conclusion derived from a close analysis of the Quran is that, and I quote, the kitab is a symbol for God's knowledge and authority, a token of the promise of continuing divine guidance. In his view, kitab means a process in the Quran rather than a product, a verbal noun rather than a concrete noun. This understanding of the term kitab, which does justice to the multivalent occurrence of it in the Quran, as we briefly surveyed, has important implications for our conception of Ahlul Kitab. The emphasis is on the ongoing guidance that God has given to humankind at various points in history in different ways, rather than a fixed canon or closed corpus. It is, in Madigan's word, again I quote, a symbol of a process of continuing divine engagement with human beings, an engagement that is rich and varied, yet so direct and specific in its address that it could never be comprehended in a fixed canon nor confined between two cupboards. We should bring this understanding of kitab to bear when we now come to reflect on who Ahlul Kitab are according to the Quran. There are around 30 verses where the Quran talks about people of the book, around 25 times when it mentions those that were given the book, and a couple of verses or places where there is mention of those to whom the book has been bequeathed. In some verses, this fundamental insight is emphasized that we have sent, I'm quoting from, for example, 2:129, we have sent among you of yourselves a messenger to recite our signs to you and to purify you and to teach you the book, يُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ, and the wisdom, and to teach you that you knew not. In all these cases, it is much more satisfactorily meaningful and relevant to understand kitab as guidance and constant engagement of God with humans. Thus, people of the book generally means any community that has received divine guidance through messengers. Taken in this broad outlook, the term can perhaps include any human community, because according to the Quran, and I quote from 1047, for example, every community has its messenger. Or indeed, from 1636, indeed, we sent forth among every nation a messenger, saying, serve you God and eschew idols. However, more specifically, the term Ahlul Kitab has come to refer to religions that have holy scripture, such as Judaism and Christianity. Apart from these two traditions in the Quran, there are references to Majus, 22:17, taken to refer to the adherents of Zoroastrianism, and Sabaeans, 262:22-17. There are discussions among the scholars as to whether or not these two traditions are included in the term Ahlul Kitab. Given the historical fact that Muslims have been engaged with Jews and Christians, interfaith relations normally takes place. In the context of Abrahamic religions, we should focus our attention on what attitude the Quran prescribes to Muslims to take towards people from these two important religious traditions. Undoubtedly, there are both positive and confirming verses about Jews and Christians in the Quran, as there are verses admonishing or reprimanding them. Generally speaking, the confirming and positive references occur more in relation to the Christians than to the Jews. The most important insight derived from a close study of these verses indicates that there is no wholesale rejection or affirmation of the beliefs and practices of Jewish and Christian traditions in the Quran. It deals with different communities, with different doctrinal views and moral tendencies at different times and contexts. Hence the impossibility of a thorough affirmation or condemnation. Bearing this broad remark in mind, here I should pay close attention to the most important verses regarding Ahlul Kitab in the Quran. In this survey, I keep an eye on the chronological order in which the relevant verses were revealed to the Prophet. This is because some scholars have suggested that the Prophet's attitude towards Jews and Christians tended to shift from positive and conciliatory in Mecca to a negative and harsh one in Medina. My understanding is that there seems to be no tenable ground for making such a case. Perhaps the first verse occurs in 28:51 to 55, where we read, a quote from the Quran, "We have caused our word to come to them so that they may be mindful. Those to whom we gave the scripture before believe in it, and when it is recited to them, say, we believe in it. It is the truth from our Lord. Before it came, we had already devoted ourselves to him. They will be given their rewards twice, because they are steadfast. Repel evil with good, give to others out of what we have provided for them, and turn away whenever they hear frivolous talk, saying, we have our deeds and you have yours. Peace be with you. We do not seek the company of ignorant people." What is admired here by the Quran is that among the people to whom God gave guidance, الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ, there are those who believe in the Quran, recognize it as a truth, and consider themselves as those who submit or devote to God. There are also many admirable moral behavior attributed to them. The interesting thing in this verse, and many similar ones, is that the Quran talks about them, on the one hand, as the people of the book, and on the other, as those who in some ways recognize the truth in the Quran or in the mission of the Prophet. The wonderful study of Jane Damon McAuliffe on chronic Christians examines how different prominent Muslim commentators of the Quran understood these and 7 other verses in which the Quran seems to be praising the people of the book in general and Christians in particular. The general tendency among the commentators is to interpret these positive references as commending those who converted to Islam, such as the Negus, Abdullah ibn Salam, or Salman al-Farsi. However, this very obvious question is never dealt with by our exegetes, that if the people praised in this verse are those who converted to Islam as a new religion, why does the Quran still talk about them as people of the book? In this verse and similar ones, there is absolutely no textual hint at the presumed conversion. 24:46 to 47 prohibit the Muslims from disputing with the people of the book, save in the fairer manner, التي هي أحسن, except with those of them who act unjustly. The main idea here seems to be making a distinction between two groups of Ahlul Kitab, those who are normally upright and those who do oppression and injustice to the Muslims. The remainder of the verse reads as follows. Say, we believe in what was revealed to us and in what was revealed to you. Our God and your God are one. We are devoted to him. نحن له مسلمون. This is the rendering of Abdul Halim, from whose Quran's translation I quote in this paper. Although this verse was revealed in Mecca, it still differentiates between the people of the book, thus rejecting the idea put forward by some scholars that the Prophet took a positive attitude towards Jews and Christians in Mecca, an aggressive one against them in Medina. As we shall see, this view is further undermined by the same discriminatory position that the Quran takes in Medinan verses. 262 is well known for its enormously pluralistic attitude towards Jews, Christians, and Sabians. It says, the believers, normally taken to refer to Muslims, the Jews, the Christians, and the Sabians, all those who believe in God and the last day and do good, will have their rewards with their Lord. No fear for them, nor will they grieve. Some Muslim commentators believe that this verse was abrogated by 385, where the Quran says, if anyone seeks a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted from him. He will be one of the losers in the hereafter. Elsewhere, I have argued that the context of this verse clearly shows that Islam here refers to submission to God, rather than the particular religion founded by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in history. And therefore, as far as adherents of other religions and also Muslims submit to God, they are Muslims with a small m. Furthermore, Muslim scholars generally maintain that abrogation applies only to legal issues, and the question here is not a legal one. Perhaps this can explain why Allama Tabatabai, prominent Shiite commentator of the Quran and generally a very good Shiite scholar of hadith, of theology, of philosophy, and other branches of Islamic sciences, does not discuss the issue of abrogation in his commentary on this verse at all, and prefers to stress that, I quote from him, the criterion and reason for moral nobility and ultimate felicity is a genuine faith in God and the last day and good deeds. None of these names, this is my understanding of his words, religious affiliations, this is what he means perhaps by names, none of these names benefit their bearers, and no quality leads to salvation except adherence to humble submission to God, ubudiyyah. Moreover, the validity of other religions mentioned in 262 is again explicitly reinforced by 569, which no commentator, as far as I know, has taken to have been abrogated. 105 and 109 point to a particular moral deficiency, namely jealousy, leading some people among Ahlul Kitab, namely those who are not faithful, to dislike anything good to be sent down to the Muslims. 109 specifically mentions that many of the people of the book wish they could turn you, Muslims, back to disbelief, even after the truth has become clear to them. Again, 105 is cautious not to generalize, and hence the disapproval is made of those to whom the truth has become clear, and yet they try to turn the Muslims back to disbelief. In his commentary, Tabatabai here talks about some Jews in Medina who did not want any revelation to be sent down to Muslims out of their fear that they may lose their privilege of having a scripture. In a couple of interesting verses, the Quran denounces exclusivism of some groups among the Jews and Christians of the time of Revelation. For example, 111 to 113 says the following. They also say, no one will enter paradise unless he is a Jew or a Christian. This is their own wishful thinking. Prophets say, produce your evidence if you are telling the truth. In fact, any who direct themselves wholly to God and do good will have their reward with their Lord. No fear for them, nor will they grieve. The Jews say the Christians have no ground whatsoever to stand on, and the Christians say the Jews have no ground whatsoever to stand on. Though they both read the scripture, and those who have no knowledge say the same, God will judge between them on the day of resurrection concerning their differences. The emphasis is again clearly on the devotion to God and good moral deeds as the main constituents of a guaranteed and safe future. To forestall Muslims from thinking that they may be exempt from the admonition mentioned in response to the exclusivism of some among the people of the book, the Quran is quick to underscore in 122 to 125 that, and I quote again, it's a lengthy quote from the Quran, but we shall admit those who believe and do good deeds into gardens, graced with flowing streams, there to remain forever, a true promise from God. Who speaks more truly than God. It will not be according to your hopes, referring to or addressing Muslims. It will not be according to your hopes, for those of the people of the book. Anyone who does wrong will be requited for it, and will find no one to protect or help him against God. Anyone, male or female, who does good and is a believer will enter paradise and will not be wronged by as much as the dip in a date stone. Who could be better in religion than those who direct themselves wholly to God, do good, and follow the religion of Abraham, who was true in faith? God took Abraham as a friend. Commenting on 111 to 113, Tabatabai underlines that, again I quote from him, true felicity revolves around genuine faith and the devotion or submission to God, implying clearly that no religious affiliation, even to Islam, can be ultimately sufficient for one's salvation. The discriminatory attitude of the Quran that we saw in some of the verses we have talked about in this paper so far is the most striking aspect of its view of the people of the book, This is what is confirmed in many other verses that I have in my paper, for example, 369, 72, and 75, 78, 100, and there are many other similar references. (369) reiterates what we already saw in 105 and 109. Some of the people of the book, I quote from the Quran, would dearly love to lead you believers, Muslims, astray, but they only lead themselves astray, though they do not realize it. What is rejected here is the attempt of some of the people of the book to lead Muslims astray, and the criticism or opposition is not directed to religion per se. In the immediately following verse, the same outlook can be seen clearly. In 372, a group of the people of the book are criticized for believing in what has been revealed to the Muslims at the beginning of the day, and then at the end of the day rejecting it. The problem is obviously with their hypocritical attitude towards the Muslim to weaken their faith and community. In this passage of the Quran, we come across very interesting verses where the discriminatory attitude expresses itself very clearly. This is what the Quran says in 375 to 78. I quote, "There are people of the book who, if you, Prophet, entrust them with a heap of gold, will return it to you intact. But there are others of them who, if you entrust them with a single dinar, very small amount of money, will not return it to you unless you keep standing over them. Because they say we are under no obligation towards the Gentiles. They tell a lie against God, and they know it. No, indeed, God loves those who keep their pledges and are mindful of Him. But those who sell out God's covenant and their own oaths for a small price will have no share in the life to come. God will neither speak to them nor look at them on the day of resurrection, will not cleanse them. Agonizing torment awaits them." What is admonished here is the moral problem of some of the people of the book who do not return the loan that they have received, and what undergirds it, which is their belief that they have no moral obligation or responsibility in relation to the Gentiles. But those who are not blemished by these deficiencies in their belief and conduct are highly praised by the Quran as being muttaqi, God conscious, which is among the noblest moral and spiritual quality that is expected from any pious human being. The other important problem in the thought and behavior of again some of the people of the book in these verses, which is mentioned in other verses of the Quran, is that they sell out God's covenant and their own oaths for a small price, meaning that they do not take even their own religion seriously. The other harsh criticism here directed toward a group of the people of the book, the group again, is that they attribute lies to God and they know it. What can clearly be understood from these verses is that the Quran distinguishes between Ahlul Kitab, praises some as good as God conscious, and criticizes some for their moral deficiencies, wrong beliefs, attributing lies to God, and other negative qualities that no religion would approve. The same discriminatory approach with regard to the people of the book is stressed in 110 to 115. I quote, "If the people of the book has also believed, it would have been better for them, for although some of them do believe, most of them are lawbreakers. But they are not all alike. There are some among the people of the book who are upright, who recite God's revelation during the night, who bow down in worship, who believe in God and the last day, who order what is right and forbid what is wrong, who are quick to do good deeds. These people are among the righteous, and they will not be denied the reward for whatever good deeds they do. God knows exactly who is conscious of it." In these verses, faith or iman is attributed to some among Ahlul Kitab, and many others are thought to be lawbreaker or sinner. There is nothing inherent wrong in their religion, and what is rejected is their sinfulness or lawbreaking, fisq in Arabic. There are very interesting mentions of some of the Ahlul Kitab here, where they are described as upright, righteous, faithful, quick to do good deeds, and most importantly from Quranic perspective, God conscious, muttaqi. That's the word used to refer to them in this verse. There can be no more explicit reference to laudable religious qualities ascribed to any human being from the Quran's point of view than what can be found in these verses in relation to some among Ahlul Kitab. After a couple of verses again in 3:199, the same outlook is reiterated. A particular verse commending Christians occurs in 57:27, where the Quran says, and I quote, "After those we sent Jesus, son of Mary, who gave him the gospel and put compassion and mercy into the hearts of his followers. But monasticism was something they invented. We did not ordain it for them, only to seek God's pleasure, and even so they did not observe it properly. So we gave a reward to those of them who believed, but many of them were lawbreakers." What is praised here is compassion and mercy in the hearts of the followers of Jesus, and also monasticism that they invented to seek God's acceptance. Of course, there is also much criticism that they did not observe it correctly. But then again, at the end, there is a discriminatory emphasis differentiating those who believed from many who were sinners. There seems to be no essential criticism, but rather rejection of sinfulness and perhaps excess in their monastic life. The whole chapter 98 talks about those who disbelieve among the people of the book and the idolaters. Again, here there is a clear distinction between Ahlul Kitab in general and those among them who disbelieve. In his commentary, Tabatabai explicates that the word min in Arabic, from or among, is to be taken to mean discrimination or differentiation, tab'iz in Arabic, rather than description, tibyan, or tabyin rather. The same distinction can also be seen in 59, verse 2. The last group of verses to be briefly studied are taken from Surah Ma'idah, the fifth, which is the chapter 5 of the Quran, but chronologically, it is the 112th surah revealed to the Prophet Muhammad in Medina. Since these verses are among the last ones revealed to Muhammad, and there are many references in them to Ahlul Kitab, they deserve considerable attention. Verses 13 to 19 contain the following main points. Many people among the Jews broke their pledge, and consequently God hardened their hearts. They distorted the meaning of revealed words, and many of them were traitors. Still, the Prophet is instructed to overlook these and forgive them. Also among the Christians, there were those who forgot some of what they were told to remember, and as a result, God stirred up enmity among them. Here again, the Quran in both cases does not generalize and talks about a group among Ahlul Kitab. What can be drawn from these verses is that the Quran does not essentially reject these religions, but rather identifies and condemns particular problems in their behavior, such as distortion, treachery, or forgetting what they were not to forget. The following verse seems to be stating that as a result of these problems, God has sent the Prophet Muhammad to make clear to them much of what they have kept hidden of their own scripture. This occurs, according to the Quran, after a break in the sequence of messengers, lest the people say, no one has come to give us good news or to warn us. No doubt that in 517 there is an unequivocal rejection of any identification of God with the Messiah, the Son of Mary. Scholars have talked about whether this is an apt description of Christian belief about Jesus, or it was a particular belief held by some Christians at the time of the revelation of the Quran. For our purpose, what seems to be interesting here, however, is that verse 17 goes on to emphasize God's power, control, and creation, which are not compromised or discarded by any interpretation of divinity attributed to Jesus in various understandings of him in Christianity. Still in chapter 5, we come across verse 59, which says, I quote, "Say, prophet, people of the book, do you resent us for any reason other than the fact that we believe in God, in what has been sent down to us and in what was sent before us, while most of you are disobedient?" Here again, what is censured by the Quran is the resentment of people and disobedience to God ascribed to many of the Ahlul Kitab, not all of them again, rather than any essential rejection of Christianity as a religion. 562 emphasizes again the problem with many among Ahlul Kitab, and the problem is that they vie in sin and enmity and they consume the unlawful. In 564-66, the same attitude is taken with respect to the Jews. Time limit perhaps does not allow me to go through this verse. What is important here is the verse
4 more minutes.
4 more minutes. Okay. So maybe I should cut anything short. Verses 80 to 83 of this surah, Surah 5, contain harsh censure of the Jews and a strong praise of the Christians. That I should forget quoting the whole verse. The first point here, these are my conclusions from this verse. The first point here is, again, the discriminatory approach. You see many of them, these are the words of Lord, you see many of them, rather than a wholesale rejection of their religion. Second, the condemnation is due to their alliance with the disbelievers, rather than anything inherently evil or abhorrent in their tradition. The Christians are praised because they are among them priests and monks in one rendering, or people devoted to learning and ascetics in another, and also because they are not arrogant. At the end of this cluster of verses that we studied, there is a verse which seems to be perplexing, where it says, and I quote, "When they listen to what has been sent down to the messenger, you will see their eyes overflowing with tears because they recognize the truth in it." This and similar verses may be taken to mean that the praise of the Christians in these verses is due to their conversion to Islam, as some commentators have speculated. The previously mentioned study of Jane McAuliffe enormously exacerbates our perplexity here, as she concludes her analysis of the exegetical works of 10 Muslim scholars on Quranic Christians in this way, and I quote, "Briefly put, these are the Christians whose scripture is the uncorrupted Injil, Gospels. These are the Christians whose persistence in the truth allowed the proper response to the historical appearance of Muhammad's prophethood. And they are Christians who either accepted the prophethood of Muhammad and the revelation entrusted to him, or would have done so had their historical circumstances permitted." In the concluding part of my paper, I would like to offer my humble understanding of how the perplexity can be removed. One important question that the interpretation of these commentators has to find an answer for is why the Quran is so frequently and constantly designates these praiseworthy people as Ahlul Kitab. Shouldn't there be any clear textual evidence that these praises are reserved for those who have converted to Islam and are therefore no longer Ahlul Kitab? In all the verses examined here and similar ones, there invariably is an emphasis that these people are among or a group of Ahlul Kitab. And this designation if this designation has any significance at all, then those people could not have abandoned their own religious traditions and converted to Islam. The interpretation of the Muslim exegetes studied by McAuliffe leads her to the view that Quranic Christians are, I quote from her again, neither the historical nor the living community of people who call themselves Christians. One important problem preventing these Muslim exegetes to come to a pluralistic understanding of the relevant verses is that they generally think that the positive verses about Ahlul Kitab were later abrogated, and thus they should be understood as referring only to those people who embrace Islam as the new religion. As we briefly discussed earlier, there are many formidable problems surrounding the idea of abrogation. Moreover, if one or two positive verse or verses is abrogated, what other hermeneutical device we might find to undermine the pluralistic tenor of so many other verses? Furthermore, if the positive verses are so seriously circumscribed to include only some groups among Ahlul Kitab who converted to Islam, such as the Negus or others, then what is the relevance or significance of these many verses for us today? More fundamentally, the traditional Muslim scholars who have taught and written about these verses in an exclusivist spirit have, I think, mistakenly taken the term Islam in 319 and 85 to refer to the historical religion established by Prophet Muhammad. The logical corollary of this mistaken view is to think that wherever in the Quran there is any praise of Ahlul Kitab, that must be limited to those who converted to Islam as the new religion. In the article mentioned above, I have argued that this is not a tenable interpretation of those verses, and what the Quran means by Islam in those verses is submission to the truth for God that in different ways can manifest itself in various religions. What seems to be underlying this untenable interpretation is a kind of theological tendency that finds the truth that Muslims find in Islam so easily accessible to non-Muslims that if they do not convert to Islam, then there is something essentially wrong in their sincerity and religiosity. This understanding is not sensitive towards observing that adherents of other religions are equally comfortable in their own religious house and do not see any reason why they should convert to another tradition. This interpretation fails to see that truth, especially religious truth, is so complex and multifaceted that to expect others to readily find the truth that one finds in their religion seems to be immature and unreasonable. Turning to the last verse of the Quran that led us to these general theological and hermeneutical remarks, I would like to offer the following interpretation of the positive verses of the Quran, where, for example, in 583 we read that, and when they listen to what has been sent down to the messenger, you will see their eyes overflowing with tears, because they recognize truth. What I understand is that these Jews or Christians that have not converted to Islam, is that these Jews or Christians are those that have not converted to Islam, hence they are still called Ahlul Kitab. Nevertheless, they could see elements or seeds of truth, piety and religiosity in the Quran or the conduct of the Prophet, something similar to what one can find in the, for example, documents like Nostra Aetate in 1965 Second Vatican Council. To sum up, I think interpretation along the suggested lines of Ahlul Kitab can be conducive to interfaith engagement, as they recognize the truth and salvific efficacy of other religions, whose beliefs and practices are different from ours, but still fully meaningful and religiously and morally inspiring for them. The traditional understanding of Ahlul Kitab is exclusivist, and hence a hindrance to interfaith relations, but a more rational interpretation of the text seems to be a great help to interreligious engagement, as it reinforces the common bonds of belonging to God's guidance, Kitab, and at the same time allows for different understandings of it according to our different religious traditions. Interestingly, this rational interpretation happens to coincide better with the literal understanding of the positive verses about Ahlul Kitab, whereas the traditional interpretation seriously limits the verses to few examples of the converted groups of Ahlul Kitab to Islam. Thank you.
عصيت والذنب كبير وإني في حزني يسير مقيد بذنبي يا رب فهل أستحق يا إلهي العفو مجرما مقر بالذنوب يا إلهي يا إلهي يا إلهي يا إلهي يا إلهي